In this video, we're going to talk about some of the oddest goalie equipment to ever hit the ice. For this video, we're going to skip over all the different goalie masks, since that deserves to be a video on its own. So sit back as we count down the oddest goalie equipment that tenders have ever used to try to stop the puck. And for the first item on our list, we have double blockers. One of the biggest privileges that a goalie has is that the goalie can freeze the puck while it's in play. The catching glove is the best tool that the goalie has to do this. But did you know that there was a goalie that played with two blockers instead of the traditional catching glove and blocker combo? Dan Blackburn was a Rangers goalie prospect with a lot of potential. He was selected to the all-rookie team and played 31 games in his rookie season. But when Blackburn was only 20 years old, he suffered a weightlifting injury that left him with nerve damage and prevented him from lifting his catching hand above his shoulder. Nonetheless, Dan Blackburn did not give up on his hockey goals. He entered Rangers training camp with two blockers, which allowed him to keep his left arm down below his shoulder and gave him a chance to play. There was some talk on whether it was legal to play with two blockers, but since it was seen as a disadvantage to go without a glove, no opposing team pressed the issue. Blackburn played in the preseason with the Rangers and played in the ECHL with the double blockers, before finally retiring from hockey in 2005.
And for the next item on our list, we have
double gloves. After hearing about Dan Blackburn playing with two blockers, would it surprise you to hear that there was a goalie that played with two catching gloves? In the 1930s and 40s, the goalie gloves and blockers looked different than they do today. They were not as different from each other then as they are now. Because of this, an ambidextrous goalie by the name of Bill Durnan was able to get two catching gloves specially made that would allow him to grab the handle of his goalie stick with either one. What made Bill Durnan unique is that he was just as strong in his left arm as he was his right, meaning handling his stick could be something that he could do with either arm, and he actually used this to his advantage. Bill would actually switch the hand that was holding his stick depending on the side of the ice the play was on. Durnan was known to hold his stick in both hands when the other team was coming his way, then switch it to one hand or the other depending on which side of the ice the play was coming from. His unpredictability to shooters served him well, as he won the Vezina Trophy 6 times and collected 2 Stanley Cup championships.
next up.
Camo goalie pads. Goalies will try anything to get an edge, including trying to camouflage themselves. And I'm not talking about military fatigues, but custom camo meant to help the goalies to blend into their background. One way a goalie may try to camouflage their pads is to include a netting pattern into the design of the goalie pads. A goalie could also choose to add some red highlights to the edge of their pads to simulate goalposts. Goalies with wider stance may adjust where those goalpost highlights are on their pads. A teenager by the name of Trevor Leahy took the idea of goalie camo to the extreme when he had goalie manufacturer Darren Stomp incorporate actual hockey netting into his pads. An idea that Trevor had patented. The idea is if the shooter is coming in on a goalie and can't easily distinguish the goalie's pads from the background, the shooter may have to take an extra second before picking their spot or blindly shooting it right into the goalie. In the NHL, goalies have never gone to this type of extreme to gain an advantage. Yet. However, there are some that believe incorporating white into their goalie pads helps the leg pads blend into the ice and the boards. Though it may be a stretch, some have suggested that Patrick Roy may have chosen his pad color scheme to help confuse shooters on exactly where his legs are. There have been some commentators that have attributed Marc-Andre Fleury's dramatic rise in save percentage in part due to his choice to change the color scheme from bright yellow pads to white pads. At one point, the NHL was reportedly discussing whether it should ban the use of white pads as a way to increase scoring, but it couldn't find any real evidence that white pads were actually an advantage.
Up next,
Step Steel skate blades. Step Steel is a special blade that goalies can attach to their skates that lift them higher off the ice, almost like mini stilts for goalies. Traditionally, goalie skates have been designed to keep the goalie low to the ice, to prevent pucks from sliding under the area around their feet. But traditionally, goalies have had a straight up and down stance. Nowadays, goalies have been setting their stances farther and farther apart as part of their butterfly stance. If your blades are too short, it limits how far you can set your stance, because at a certain point, the boot of the goalie skate will make contact with the ice instead of the blade. This also means that if you want to stay down in your butterfly stance, but but continue to move, you'll need to lift your leg up higher before your blade makes contact with the ice. However, if you had longer blades on your skates, you could widen your stance and push off without needing to lift your leg as high. And this is what step steel does for goalies. YouTuber GoProGoalieUzi explains it best here.
I picked up the Extreme Step Steel blade. I'm hoping that this blade here is going to help me with slides and recoveries, make my movements a bit quicker. What this blade is going to do is it's going to make you appear as a bigger goalie because you're going to be much more higher up the ice. When you're in your standing position, you're going to be taking up a lot more of the net there. Also for your slides. So you're not going to have to bring your leg in too tight when you push off to your right or to your left. You'll be able to have your leg further out, and because the blade is longer, you're going to be able to just push that baby along and slide off.
For our next item, we have
Overdrive skate blades.
If having longer skate blades was not enough of an advantage, then maybe Overdrive blades are for you. While step steel reduces the amount you need to lift your leg to dig your skate into the ice, Overdrive blades remove the need to lift your legs at all to push off. Overdrive blades are extra steel that are attached to the side of a goalie's skate, 90 degrees offset from the main steel blades. Installing the blades often requires drilling extra holes in a goalie skate so that they can be mounted to the side. With these extra blades, while the goalie is flat on the ice in their butterfly, the Overdrive blades makes contact with the ice, providing leverage to push off from. They also prevent slip-outs and ensure that all of the power from a goalie's leg contributes to each push. You won't see these extra blades on any NHL goalies though. They were deemed an unfair performance advantage and thus have been banned by the NHL Competition Committee. next on our list,
The cheater. Yes, you heard that right. This next one is actually called a cheater. But many hockey fans may be surprised to hear that this is something that they see all the time in the pros. To understand what a cheater is, we need to take a look back at how some of the old catching gloves that goalies wore decades ago looked. The cuff and the mitt sections of the catching glove were two separate distinct sections. The rules that determine if a glove is too big look at the max width and the circumference of a glove. So connecting the cuff to the mitt not only blocks more space, but it doesn't increase the glove's max width or its circumference. And this is exactly what the cheater does. It connects the cuff to the mitt, which blocks off more area that a puck could go. Glenn Chico Resch has been credited by some to be the first to take the cheater to the NHL. Out of all the different cheater designs, there was one that went beyond all others. The GM LGDC had a cheater section that was actually a pocket that could catch a puck if shot into it, instead of just block it away. The Cooper GM LGDC also had a third mini pocket, so that if a puck slipped out of your glove, there was a chance that it would be caught in the cuff pocket instead of falling to the ice and potentially causing a big mistake. The Cooper GM LGDC was eventually banned in most leagues. However, the cheater never actually went away. Over time, this just began getting integrated into the gloves, and all modern catching gloves have this section integrated in the glove, just with better integration design. Though, if you turn over some modern gloves over to the back, the cheater influence can sometimes still be easily seen.
next up,
The Curtis Curve. In the fall of 1983, the trademark for the Curtis Curve was filed at the Canadian Intellectual Property Office. Back then, many goalies were still using sticks that were completely flat, even on the blade. So many goalies had gotten used to playing the position with a flat stick, and playing in a system where the goalie doesn't go out and play the puck, that switching to a stick that had a curved blade was seen as a big step and a bit intimidating. But the game was changing. Goalies were being asked to play the puck more. But a lot of goalies were not yet comfortable doing this. One innovation to make this transition easier was the release of the Curtis Curve. This stick not only had the curved blade that we're all used to seeing today, but it had a unique curved shaft that was designed to make grabbing the stick with your glove hand easier. The design also proved to be useful when going paddle down by creating a flat seal across the ice. There was one more curve at the top of the stick too that allows a goalie to easily pick up a stick that was laying flat on the ice.
Some say the top curve also helped to give leverage on shots. The Curtis curve was never officially banned. It just slowly fell out of favor. Better blockers and glove designs may have helped do away with the Curtis curve. With modern gloves, picking up a stick is not nearly as hard as it was with the old blockers of the 80s and earlier. Modern gloves are also easier to control and grab the paddle of the stick so that playing the puck is not nearly as difficult as it was with the older gloves. But there have been some manufacturers of modern sticks that have brought back the Curtis curve, but it never really gained as much interest from the public when it was reintroduced. Next up, custom goalie paddles. We have seen with the Curtis curve that the shape and feel of a goalie stick doesn't have to be identical for every goalie. One of the areas that goalies have been customizing a lot is the shape of the goalie paddle. Most often it's the top that's adjusted. This is where the goalie grips the stick. The first paddle modification that I remember seeing is Dominic Hasek's paddle. The top was cut down into a crescent shape to allow a deeper grip on the stick. Modifications like these could be done very simply by getting a stick, clamping it down, and cutting out the parts you don't want to keep. Later, I started noticing all sorts of custom grip designs being cut into the stick paddles. One popular design today is the trigger grip that allows you to wrap your pointer finger around the paddle for more control. Here's a stick that Philip Grubauer used when he was a member of the Washington Capitals. Notice the unique pyramid build-up design. Here's a design that Lundqvist is known to have used. But cutting out sections isn't the only way that goalies have customized their paddles or improved their grips. There have since been commercially available add-ons that goalies can use to modify their sticks. Rubber grips like this are the preference for some goalies. One other type of add-on that goalies are using are paddle wedges or paddle blocks. The idea is if a puck is sliding up the stick, this add-on will protect the vulnerable fingers from getting crushed by the puck.
Up next, cricket goalie pads. Hockey's a sport that's been around for a very long time, so when we look back at some of the early days, we can see that equipment manufacturing was quite a bit behind what it is today, and the types of equipment available had a big impact on how the game is played. When organized hockey was just starting in Canada in the late 1800s, goalies really didn't have any special equipment and were just another player on the ice. But after some time of having shots blasted off their legs, they started to look for something to protect their vulnerable legs. The solution that was turned to was to use cricket pads on their legs. Cricket was already a well-established British sport, and with Canada at the time having such strong British ties, finding pad manufacturers for cricket seemed like the best solution for the swollen leg problems of the earliest goalies. In the early 1900s, special cricket-like pads that were designed specifically with ice hockey in mind began to appear, and the goalie leg pads began to evolve on their own trajectory.
And finally, last on our list, we have oversized goalie pads. Goaltending equipment has definitely always been growing since its beginning, but around the late 90s and early 2000s, equipment really started to explode in size. Goalies started reading the rules and noticed that there was not a lot of rules around some parts of the goaltender equipment. Gloves and blockers were strictly regulated, but chest protectors and goalie pants had not yet received detailed restrictions. One of the first goalies to realize this and take advantage of this was Garth Snow. Snow sported a chest protector that extended far out beyond his body to block as much of the net as possible. Snow was once quoted as saying, "When I'm playing well, I'm not even moving. The puck is just hitting me, and I'm on my angles. It almost looks like I'm nonchalant out there." The chest protector was so much larger than everyone else's that it was eventually ruled to be too large, and the league clarified their rules. Goalie pants didn't have strict rules either, so goalies started to wear larger and larger pants. The internals of goalie pants began to be designed with internal belts to allow smaller thin net minders to wear pants that would normally only fit on a larger goalie. When it came to the leg pad rules, it was already solidly established that leg pads could be no wider than 12 inches, but there was not yet a rule for how tall they could be. One of the first netminders to exploit this rule was goalie Garth Snow. With his chest protector a bit scaled down, Snow moved on to experimenting with different heights of leg pads. with one report saying that he was spotted sporting 47-inch leg pads, nearly a foot taller than today's max limit of 38 inches. This is especially shocking when you consider the height of a net is only 1 inch above that at 48 inches. But it wasn't just Garth Snow that was wearing bigger pads. Goalies all over the league had been wearing larger and larger pads. When Glenn Hall pioneered the butterfly style, it didn't immediately spread to the rest of the goalies right away, partly because the equipment of the time still allowed for plenty of scoring opportunities against this technique. But with modern equipment, you can really see why it became the dominant style in the pros. There are now more specific regulations for the size of goaltender equipment, but it doesn't look like we're going to go back to the true form-fitting pads of yesteryear. But the mammoth pads from the beginning of the millennium also look like they are gone for good. What was your opinion of this list? Was there anything that was left out? Was there anything that surprised you? Leave your opinions in the comments below.